But we are going to have wonderful presenters here. We have Jane Bozarth, who is internationally known as a speaker and author of several books. Most recently, her book is Social Media for Trainers. She's also an author for the Learning Solutions magazine in the popular Nuts and Bolts column. We have Jane Hart here. Jane Hart's a social learning consultant with a long, successful track record of helping businesses improve job and business performance. She also is a visiting lecturer at Oxford University on the MSc for e-learning, and she's the founder for the Center of Learning and Performance Technologies, where she provides a number of wonderful resources. I've gone there often. So I'm really excited, as I know both Janes, to have them launch into this wonderful presentation, and looking forward to it.
Thanks, Sharon, and welcome to everybody. Well, you guys gave us some great introductions, but let's just make sure that you know which of the Janes we are. This is Jane Bozarth, and if you don't know her, then you really should. Jane's flown all the way from the US to join us today. Her title is e-learning coordinator, but that really doesn't tell you anything about the massive work she does all around the States at conferences. And of course, she's written so many fantastic books. As Sharon says, her Social Media for Trainers one is really a must-read, but she now has a very new book about to emerge. I think it's May, isn't it, Jay? And that really is going to be a showstopper. I've seen a few chapters of it, and it's really going to be a great book. And we're just going to be referring to it a bit during this session today. On Twitter, she's at Jane Bozarth. So really, Jane's a must follow, I think.
All right. Is my mic hot? Am I good? The other Jane is Jane Hart from Bath. Came all the way from Bath this morning for us, and she's the founder of the Center for Learning and Performance Technologies. Jane has been around a long time. She used to be Jane Knight, and that's where I first knew her, and she went and changed her name on me because, you know, we might need to flee the country someday, and you need to have an alternate name, an alias. She's the author of the Social Learning Handbook, which is out in a new edition this year, correct? It's out now? It's available now? Lulu?
It's on Lulu, yes.
And e-learning, and she's on Twitter as Center for Learning and Performance Technologies, C4LPT.
Great,
and together we are the Evil Janes. The first time we were together was in Vegas several years ago, and we decided we should form a rock band called the Evil Janes and the Righteous So-Me's. And the next thing I knew, there was a Facebook page, there was a Twitter handle, there was a website. She did all that. So we're the Evil Janes, and we take on the world together. So
you better explain why we're evil.
Why are we evil?
Yeah, because we say things not a lot of people like to hear. Yeah. We tell it as it is, don't we?
Also, I forgot, I meant to give this to her earlier. When Jane was in the States last, she asked me what grits were, but we were in a part of the country that didn't have them. So I brought Jane some instant grits that I forgot to give her this morning.
Oops.
Pocket full of grits. Yes, she's come from the American South, and this is what she's brought with her. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll?
Yeah.
So we want to talk this morning about why it's important to learn from one another, rather than just the training department, L&D, pushing the content out, pushing the learning down. If you go to the next slide, please, Jane. We were anticipating Wi-Fi challenges, silly us, right? So I have prepared some slides that have screenshots from things we were concerned might not display very well this morning. We were right about that concern. So how many of you have seen the RSA-style videos where the hand is moving while someone is talking? And they look cool and they look very impromptu. There's a fellow in America who teaches 8th graders. That's about 13-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds in our country. And he wanted to make an RSA video about the Battle of Gettysburg with his kids, and he found out very quickly this is not a matter of somebody with a hand drawing while someone talks. It doesn't work that way. It took several class sessions, and he blogged about that experience. Next slide, please, Jane. Talking about just doing a rough draft on paper, talking about the challenges of narrowing down content to really critical information that was going to have to go in this video. He talks about how important it was to do a dress rehearsal and to just try it out once in the hallway there, you see, rather than try to actually do it live that day. He wrote pretty extensively about how they did the audio voiceover, because you don't just record as you go like it looks like in the video. You have to go back after the fact, and having kids do that and having them added in. He had a very elaborate setup that you see he illustrated here. So, and you can go to a black screen now for a minute, please. So my question is, this was an enormous undertaking. This ended up being, you can black it out if you want to, Jane. A huge project, multi-days, lots of kids, lots of stuff going on. Who within the organization could have learned from this experience? Who inside the school might have benefited from what he learned about this? The other teachers? The students, the other kids? AV, if the school has in-house technology people, right, who I think were only marginally involved with this. All right, how about outside the school? Other schools could benefit from this. The community, how? Okay, all right. I learned a lot from this. These look really cool when you see them happen on YouTube. It was really interesting to see how much work it took to get the setup. And it wasn't just because they were kids. Is there anything super secret or proprietary about this information? That it shouldn't be freely shared with the whole world? Where was the training department? People are learning out loud, people are learning a lot, people are undertaking a huge learning project. Where was the in-house professional development staff or the learning and development staff? People are learning all the time at work without necessarily involving us, right? Let's take a look at one more. Jane, let's skip over to the next one. This is a colleague of mine, David Sinksy, taught himself to code in 8 weeks. And he wrote a long blog post about it that got picked up by Mashable and a few other big sites. If you go to the next one, he talks about what he did across 8 weekends to teach himself this. It started with Python. I think he did Ruby on Rails. And he talks about what he learned while learning. For instance, he says things like you have to do all the exercises all the way through, and then erase them and do them again and make sure you really get them. Don't try to convince yourself you understand it if you don't. He talks about the effort he put into having to learn this across a span of time. A lot of us think learning happens very quickly, and if we don't pick it up right away, we kind of give up, right? He talks about the reality of learning this, and he did do it. There's research from Tufts that says the average human adult undertakes 8 self-directed learning projects a year of about 40 hours each. And we tend to forget that, because when we're sitting down learning it, we don't know. So I ask you the same question. Who inside his organization could benefit from this? Anyone? Anyone interested in coding? Anyone in the departments that are involved in that? How about outside his organization?
Anyone interested in it?
Anybody interested in coding? Anybody interested in the reality of that? And I ask you, again, was this especially proprietary or secret or internal information of some use to competitors? No. So a couple of things I want to ask you about here. What if you had this going on in your organization? Projects of this scope, projects with people undertaking stuff of their own time, of their own volition, this guy on the weekends. So what if you had all this going on, but they weren't blogging about it? How much of this goes on that nobody ever writes down? How much of this goes on that no one ever talks to each other about? How many people do stuff and don't ever think, I should tell everybody I did that? Or how many people undertake something like this and say, well, that was hard, but I'm going to keep it to myself? Where you are sitting, I'd like for you to talk just where you are about how we as training practitioners, as learning and development professionals, can support this and help people surface what they're learning and help them share with each other for the benefit of everybody else what's going on. So where you're sitting, what could training and development be doing to help with these things? All right, just for a couple of minutes. I meant to. Jen, you know how to black the screen? I do. I could. You hit the B key. It blacks. Oh. Look, Jane. Look. See, now you've learned something. I'm like, she didn't black. Why isn't she doing this?
Okay.
That's funny.
That's why I went back.
That's funny. Was that enough to get them going?
I hope so. Yeah.
They're talking.
Yeah.
All right, someone way back in the room, what are some ideas you had? Way in the back. What are some, yes, sir?
Colleague on my left suggests sharing and showcasing, and we were talking also about creating an informal platform and environment. An unconference and unmeeting sound encourage sometimes just not to go with, formal outcome expectation process. Just, shift it, change it about, mix and match.
Okay, so let them push up rather than us push everything back out. How about over here, this direction? What did you all talk about? Or as we say where I come from, y'all. What y'all talk about?
Well, we said to get this working, you need to involve the line managers out there. And what can training department do is, well, give the skills to collaborate and push it and help this cultural change to happen.
Right, and I think, and you can say I'm wrong, but I've seen it in my own world, I think that we don't listen very well. And I think that sometimes employees have learned not to let us know what they're doing because they're doing and try to control it. So figuring out how to sort of adjust not the alignment and the culture to allow for people to share back, to allow for us to hear what they're saying. How about over this way? That's right, and we're too busy having meetings to stop and share something useful, right? So trying to replace some of the existing structure, you've got to make room for it by taking out something else or by moving something else. In my organization, one of the things that worked very well, very quickly, we had weekly status reports that no one ever read, including me. Sometimes I would ask Twitter to help me think of things to put on my weekly reports. I would have people tweet stuff and I'd put it on there. Nobody was going to read them. Saved Manhattan, swoop down. One of the things we did, though, on the weekly reports, it had a line item for research, and people would write down they'd read a book or they'd looked at a website or they were interested in something. We changed the question to what did you learn this week? And we got very different, better, deeper answers. People are not very mindful of their own learning, and you know that. How many times have you've suddenly heard a song you could sing along to? And you had no realization you had learned all the lyrics to the song. A lot of what we learn, most of it is social, but a lot of it is informal, and a lot of it is unconscious. We just sort of take it in. Other things that you all talked about, anybody on fire to share something about where the training department is, what the training department should be doing? Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about confidence, how, as you mentioned, it's sometimes difficult to recognise learning, but also people might be aware that they're learning something, but embarrassed to share it.
Being embarrassed, making sure it's a safe environment.
Yeah, and so placing value on all different types of learning skills and techniques like sewing, knitting, anything.
Go to YouTube and see how many people are willing to share simple things. Could you all hear her? It's hard to hear behind people talking. She's talking about confidence, about willing to share without being embarrassed, about making that a safe thing to share without people poking fun. And I saw a hand. Yes, sir.
We have talked about the fact that there is an evolution in the role of L&D from content training provider to learning support. And L&D must do the necessary to implement a learning culture in the company.
For years we have been saying that, but now the learners really are able to drive around us. They can go around and blog about it. They can go around and make a YouTube of it. That is, I think, what has changed, is that the learners have way more access and easy access and control over the way they are publishing and sharing some of this stuff. And did I see a hand? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we were also discussing that some people it's really willing to share.
Yes.
The problem is how to make what they know something that someone else can use. Because the James Joyce stream of consciousness doesn't really transfer any kind of...
Well, so is that a training problem? Is that something we could do a workshop on? There is a really simple, here are some things to share, here are some ways to do it, here are some examples. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking for helping people to do this, I think that there are really obvious opportunities for that. But to your point, I have a different question. Why do people share? Why does somebody sit down and write a blog post that probably took him a day to write and drop in video clips and drop in images with illustrations of how to set up the audio? Why does somebody share that?
They're sharing their achievement.
They're sharing an achievement. They're proud of it, as opposed to your question about being embarrassed by it. They're proud of it. This took a lot of my time. Let me tell you how I did it. Let me show you how you can save yourself time. Here are lessons I learned. Here's what you need to expect if you want to try coding. It's going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of time, but once you're done, you're done. There's a good deal of research that talks about the tension between the organization's belief that they own your brain and the data in it that can be captured and fed into a little spreadsheet forever, and the fact that knowledge should be shared for the public good, which tends to be what employees think, unless it's proprietary or confidential, or you've got pharmaceutical research, you've got R&D stuff going on. Most of the stuff most of us share is useful to somebody, and helping other people recognize that, helping people learn how to share it, helping people find a way to say, I saved a lot of time doing it this way, let me tell you about that, let me save you the effort, let me save you the trouble. Let me help you find other expertise in the organization. Let me find somebody for you who's already done that. I think L&D is uniquely positioned to help connect the talent silos in our organizations. We see everybody. Sooner or later, we see senior management, we see frontline workers. We kind of know where the bright stars are. We know where people are really struggling, and I think we could do a lot more to help those dots connect. Jane? Jane's tweeting something. I'm sorry.
You asking me what my opinion on that? Or you want to move on? My time to move on. Oh, wait, great. My time. Okay, good. Well, Jane's talked about sharing your work, your experiences. I want to talk now about sharing things and the ways that people can share things in organizations. So let's get that screen back on. And I wanted to talk to you about, or show you a few examples of how we might share job aids or aid memoir, if you like. And my first example was this one here. I'm going to try and get it onto in the live version of it now. Let's see if we can find it here. Here's the live version. 6-minute video of how to use this camera. Huh? 6 seconds, sorry, 6 seconds, using Vine, a little app that you can get for your phone. So this person, Daniel, just took his little video, ready, steady, shoot, and just made it available on Vine. And the other example I have for you, which actually was one that Jane shared with me, is a website called Snap Guide. I don't know if you've seen that. Let's get the presentation back up here, and I'll show you it. And Snap Guide basically allows you to create a little performance support, or whoops. Let's get this visible on the screen now. Snap Guide. How to activate assistive touch on your phone. So this one's a bit about video and text and so forth. And just somebody, again, used the Snap Guide app on their iPhone and created this little guide on how to use this to do assistive text. Here we are, just a few things, few snapshots, few examples, and so forth. And once again, this person has just decided this was quite an important little thing for him or her to learn. Why don't I share it freely with anybody else? So my question really is, how can we support this? We often think about performance support as something that L&D have to do for other people. We have to create job aids for other people, probably as part of a course or something. But how can we start to support other people to share their job aids themselves that they create? I mean, what other examples might there be of people being able to share little things like this? Can you think of anything? Anybody think of anything that might be useful to take a little video of and show and share with colleagues? One that came to my mind was, how to unjam the printer. You don't want to go and find the flipping manual, do you? Somebody just sit there, take a video of somebody unjamming the printer and share it with everybody else. Any other ideas? Can you think of anything, Jane?
Well, we've all got crazy systems, particularly HR systems, which are incomprehensible. But if you're sitting next to the people who have designed the so-called training for it, and you want to put up your own little video, well, not that we can put up videos just but you know what I mean.
Well, do you need to have to put them onto enterprise systems? You could use Vine or...
Well, that's banned.
That's banned. But people make their way around these things, don't they? They use their iPhones and their iPads to access all this stuff. Saying something's banned is probably pretty irrelevant in today's world. They might not be able to use it through their enterprise PCs, but they certainly can go and access it through their iPhones and their iPads. And they're doing it all the time. You're doing it all the time, aren't you? Yeah. So, we can share and support one another. So, what kind of formats are going to be useful for this kind of thing? I showed video. Is that the best thing to do? I mean, video seems to be really popular nowadays. Or is it going to be something text-based? Or could it be a bit mixture of both? So I think L&D have a part to play in helping teams do this for themselves. Do you agree? Yeah. We shouldn't be doing it all for them. So how would you help a team to do that? How would you help them to start creating this stuff?
Demonstrate by example.
Exactly. So show these things that you've done yourself. What I wanted to do was do one just now, but I didn't have enough time to quickly do something. But just show how quick and easy it is to create something as they'll upload it on an external platform if it's nothing secure and proprietary or comprehensive. And, you know, I don't know if you've seen Google Tips. This is an excellent site of ways people can actually then begin to collaborate and put things together. Okay, this is a Google site, but it works in the same way. You know, people can just start sharing these things. They can be rated and commented on, and the good stuff will eventually rise to the top. So that's just another way which you can help teams share what they're learning, just solving their own performance problems and thinking, well, if I had that problem, then somebody else probably is going to have it as well. I can share this, and it's available if anybody else needs to find it. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was sharing links, because this is something that most of us do quite a lot of. And as organizations start to introduce, you know, platforms like Yammer and so forth, we're finding that people are sharing their links quite easily now. They have a platform, internal platform to do that. It doesn't have to necessarily be on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. We now have internal platforms to do it. But also one thing I'm finding is that because sharing is becoming quite a popular concept in businesses, people are thinking, right, I'm now going to monitor you and make sure you do share stuff. So what we're getting rather is oversharing. People just sharing stuff because they know that their big brother is watching them, and then unless they share something, they'll think, oh my goodness, I better share something today. So they just put a link on. So what actually we're doing is actually causing more problems by doing that. So what we need to think about is how can we add some value to what we share? How can we start thinking about, well, if this might be an important link to share, how can we now add some value? Rather than just put in the link, what can we do to try and explain why that is important? So perhaps you'd like to spend a few minutes thinking about, rather than just putting a link on there, how can we add something extra that shows and provides a bit more value to that link? Have a chat around and see what you come up with. I've got quite a big list here, so hopefully you'll come up with some of the same things I thought about. Okay, let's have a think about this. We've got quite a lot to do today, so let's just have a chat. So I said, I think one of the important things to do is when you share something like a link, you don't just put the link in and that's it. You actually perhaps explain why it's important. I think you should look at this link because, and provide a reason for it, how it fits into thinking. So what other ways do you think you might add value, how much you add value to something you share? Anybody got any suggestions?
We thought you should add context and relevance.
Yes, exactly. What's my next point? Make it relevant. Well done. And the next one as well. Put it in context. Look, you've been reading my slides. Anything else?
Make it contentious.
Could be, yes. Yes, so exactly. Because people obviously just go through links and they don't actually look if there's something there. Make it stand out in some way. Anything else? Absolutely, yeah. So focus it on somebody. I think in Yammer you can, can't you? You can actually CC people in, you know, say, look at this. So really targeted at somebody. Anything else?
You say make it relevant, but make it useful is also...
Make it useful, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, you've got to go through the thought process of putting yourself in the shoes of the recipient. So you think, okay, what do they actually want from it? And the first thing is, as we said, what's in it for me? But it's got to be memorable, it's got to be actionable. So you've got to, I think editorial, some kind of just something you can latch onto and use in your next meeting or whatever it's called.
Right.
Memorability and action.
Yeah. So I think next time you share something, think about it. When I tweet something out, I try and add something to it, you know. I don't just put the link. Sometimes I'm a bit naughty and I don't do it, but I really try to consciously think, could I say something else that really adds extra value? And I think one of the other things is join the dots, you know. How does this bit of knowledge fit in with something else? Like might be something like, we're thinking, guys, about doing X, Y, Z. This piece of... this resource might be useful for that. So help people join up the dots, because a lot of what we're sharing is random, unstructured pieces of information, and we need to help people see a sort of pathway through all the stuff. So otherwise it's just a mass of stuff. So join the dots, help people see how it fits in with something else. And also perhaps synthesize, you know. One of the things I try and do is if I tweet something, I try and sort of capture a little bit, perhaps a sentence or the whole sort of essence of that resource in a sentence or a short amount of words, and really kind of try and say, this is really why it's important to look at, because this is really the nub of it all, because perhaps people haven't got the time to read it through, but if they read those few words, that might be something to jog them into reading it. And you could even represent it in a new form. It doesn't just have to be a link. You could use it to perhaps create a post yourself, because often if I see something out on Twitter or something, that's actually too important just to link. I need to write something about this and say more words about it. So represent it, perhaps visualize it. I notice a lot of people that take things I say and they turn it around and put it in a format that perhaps makes more sense, some graphic or something. So sharing doesn't just have to be just retweeting a link or resharing a link. It can actually, by adding value, that's where we're really going to benefit when we start to share.
You can also add value by asking questions.
Absolutely, yes.
And so you involve your audience.
Absolutely. So there's lots of ways, and I think that's really the key to sharing stuff. It's not just regurgitating stuff, because what we're doing then is just oversharing. And we're sharing for sharing's sake, probably because you know, someone said, you know, you're being monitored on it, hopefully not. But we're getting garbage in, garbage out. You know, we're not having some sense-making taking place in the middle, which is important. So I think, you know, the important thing is to think about who, first of all, we're sharing it with. Is this relevant for my work group? Is this something really more relevant for my external network? Or is it relevant for any particular person? And are we adding value to it? And or are we just adding noise? And I think this, I saw this quote the other day, don't talk unless you can improve the silence. Now, we don't want to take that too literally, because I know perhaps nobody will ever do anything, but really, are you adding anything more important, or is it just adding noise? And I think that's really the key to sharing. We've got to be very discriminate about how and what we share, otherwise we're just causing more problems for people. Everybody shares everything they find indiscriminately. It's probably worse than if nobody shared anything at all. So that's my little piece. We've got a lot to cover today, as you know, so we're now going to go on and talk about professional networks, and Jane's going to take over this little piece here.
Okay, could I have a mic back, please? I would like to point out that Jane Hart's definition of being naughty is that sometimes she tweets something without context. She and I have different definitions for what naughty might mean. So let's talk about the importance of a professional network. How many of you feel that you have a pretty good network in your workplace or among your work colleagues in whatever your situation is? All right, how many of you have reached out beyond the walls of your organization and have a bigger network? Where are they? Mine are on Twitter. Where is your bigger network?
So yeah, Twitter, but also Training Zone.
Training Zone, okay, all right. Others of you, where is that network? Are they physical? Are they online? Yes, ma'am. Nonprofit associations, industry groups, learning skills groups, LinkedIn groups. Anybody doing LinkedIn? Yes, ma'am. Meetup. Okay. Yep. LinkedIn groups. Those kind of things. I work in an organization with 85,000 people, and I am the only one who does what I do. If it weren't for external groups, if it weren't for external online, especially places for me to talk with other people, there would be no one for me to talk to, especially as I've moved into the world of social media beyond just training design kinds of tasks. So it's been really important for me to get involved more in a community that's outside of my immediate workplace. What value do you get from that? Do you invest a little time in what you're doing? Why do you do it? What value do you feel you get from having that network? Helping others, okay. Getting new ideas. And I repeat them. It's hard sometimes for people in the back to hear what people in the front are saying. I'm not trying to just parrot. Yeah. I saw a hand.
Building a roadmap on where we're going in the organization.
Building a roadmap. Do you ever just feel like somebody out there understands me? You ever feel like, thank goodness there's somebody else on earth who knows this is hard or that this is a challenge? So, you know, we build networks for a lot of reasons, but I would say that many of us, especially in the age of social tools, have started recognizing the value of developing contacts outside our immediate work environment, of being able, as I've said before, to reach outside of silos we may typically have been in. Now, how many of you follow me on Twitter? You're all supposed to raise your hand now. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I tweet a lot. I have something like 45, 50,000 tweets, because I am adding to the noise, Jane, I admit it. It's probably... I have maybe 10,000 Twitter followers, and I'm not that naive. That's probably like 3,000 real people and 7,000 others. But I engage a lot. I help with Learn Chat nearly every week. So does Mr. Kelly back here in the blue shirt. I engage a lot. I tweet a lot of information. I try to add context to that. I answer people. I'm trying not to be terribly snarky. I've been known to be a little snarky, but I don't typically try to derail or berate or embarrass or that kind of thing. So I engage a lot. And the end result of that investment is that eventually I often find when I have a problem or I have a question, I do get help pretty quickly from a pretty big audience. So let me show you an example of something that happened in the real world. Now, I work for state government. So one day I'm at my desk after lunch, so it's already afternoon, and I got a call from our vocational rehabilitation services saying they had an employee who wanted to attend a webinar, but they needed to accommodate the visual impairment this person had. I should know the answer to this, but I don't. I've been doing this 10 years. I'm using WebEx and products like that. I don't know. Here is my conundrum. I got 85,000 other employees, right, co-workers. Probably somebody in IT services knew the answer to this, but I don't know who that is. I don't know how to find out who that is. So I could get on the phone and spend 10 minutes or all afternoon, maybe or maybe not, getting the answer. Do you see my problem? The odds are very good somebody at one of our universities knows the answer to this. They do a lot of work with accessibility for college students. I don't know who it is. We don't have a good way to hunt down people with this expertise. We don't really have a good yellow pages. We have an $80 million HRIS system, and I can't search it to find out anything useful. Okay? So it's the same problem. I could have called around all afternoon and maybe gotten an answer, or maybe not gotten an answer, or I could have Googled around. Google's great if you know what you're looking for. I could have Googled around, and have you ever been in this situation where you know it's out there, but you don't know how to find it, and you have to weigh out the investment? So I tweeted it. And I got, in about 2 minutes, I had a dozen answers, Jane, including this one. Go ahead. From someone I don't know. I was able to go straight to WebEx. I found the job aid. It had the word blind in the title. We have not used the word blind in 20 years. I would never have searched for that. It's politically incorrect now to say blind in the States. So I would never have looked for that. So I got the answer just like that. It's kind of serendipitous. This person I don't know happens to follow me, happens to see it. I can't say I get this answer every single time. But this is the advantage to having a good, robust professional network. But you have to engage. You get back what you give. You can't have a Twitter account and tweet 9 times and follow 4 people and then complain that when you need help, nobody responds to you. It's an investment. It's an investment of your time. It's helping others when it has no value to you in particular. But you will find that the more you cultivate those networks, the better off you'll be. And I think the next piece is yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to say why I have a professional network. And I've actually written a blog post about it today because somebody said to me, how do you keep up to date? And I said, I keep up to date through my professional network. I probably couldn't be standing here talking unless I was, had a very strong network from whom I'm learning. So what I get to see is hear about tools, which are never going to appear on any conference stand because they're probably free or very low-cost tools. And also hear about all the great work people are doing around the world, which probably never gets any airtime at conferences. So for me, professional network is about finding out and engaging with those people and asking, seeing what's happening, what's new, what's leading edge, what's happening out there, not necessarily what's already happening. But for me, the value for me comes in finding out what's new and what's happening. So if you are into the business of trying to keep up to date with what's happening in the world, then you can get a drip feed of information every day by having a professional network, because you're going to get new ideas, new resources, new links, whatever it is, on a constant basis. Now, clearly, that's my core business to find that out, and I have notifications on all day, so as soon as something comes in of any value, I'm notified about it, and I will take time out of what I'm doing to have a look at it, because that's the way I work. But even if you don't work like that and you need to focus on it, just spending a bit of time looking at your people you follow, what they're saying, you can pretty much have a constant professional development, because you're finding out about new stuff constantly. And in some ways, one day at a conference a year is almost becoming passé, isn't it? Sorry about that. So we've talked about the value of a professional network for us as individuals. I've talked about for me, and many of you have got one. Obviously have recognized the value in it. But really, I wanted to ask the next question, what value does your professional network bring for your organization or your team? So I'm not going to say anything. Here's a time for some more chatting around the topic, because Jane thinks that's a very British thing to say. Have a little chat on your tables about what value you think your individual professional network brings to your organization. Does it bring any value? If it does, what value that might be? Okay, let's convene now. First of all, where's Rob Foster? Rob, where are you? Rob was very sad that I didn't include him in the picture, so we're going to take a picture of Rob in a minute, okay? Okay, good. Right, so who doesn't think that your own personal network, professional network, has no value for your organisation at all? Anybody does think that? Oh, that's good. So the question then is, what? Oh, okay. You tell me why you don't think it's any value then.
Only because the ones that I've been involved in is just so much garbage.
You're not following the right people then, or you? Okay, so you better come and talk to Jane and me, and we'll tell you who to. Well, they're obviously not following the right people. That's the important thing, and that's right. If you don't get value out of it, just follow the few core people that you are. I mean, if I don't find anybody of value, I just don't follow them anymore, and that's fine. That's what it's all about. The professional network is for you. You haven't got to follow anybody or go into LinkedIn, but when you do, it's got to be of value to you. But the question now then is, how is your professional network of value to your organisation? And hopefully there's some responses. Claire?
Sharing other similar firms' experiences, good and bad.
Great.
To bring those back into our organisation and
Brilliant.
benefit from their experience.
Exactly.
10 years doing that, and that wouldn't be without it.
Exactly. So for those who perhaps didn't hear, about sharing experiences of other organisations and bring back into your organisation so you can hear about what everybody else is doing out there and learn from it and bring it back into the organisation. Anything else?
Being inspired by the sharing that's going on. So being in those communities and finding out what other people are doing, and that might just trigger off a different way of taking stuff back into your own organisation.
Right.
I work for a charity, so it's always about doing everything as cheap as possible, thinking of big ideas and finding a cost-effective way of doing that.
So your network is based around other people who are doing very similar work to yourself and you can learn from all the time and then bring that value, bring that information back into your own organization. Great. There was somebody over here?
Yeah, I'm building an entirely new leadership management program with a blank sheet of paper, and I've been in the organisation 4 months. And I've gone around to similar organisations and exposed what's quite an organic, growing process of where I started 3 months ago to where I am now. It was actually a very structured project because of that network.
And you couldn't have done that without your network, not as quickly probably. So any other examples? Anyone like to share? So I think your own professional network does have value if you bring what you learn, excuse me, back into that organisation, because organisations need to learn continuously, don't they? They can't just regurgitate the same old stuff internally, round and round and round. They're not going to go anywhere. They need the input from outside. And there's new stuff, all the time, new ideas, new concepts, new resources. And organisations need everybody to feed that in, although we've seen that it's got to be discriminating about what you do and who you share it with. But certainly they need that information from everyone to come in. And, it's no longer a matter of waiting for all that new stuff to be codified or put into a course. It's about learning as you go from this new stuff and acting on it. We need to be agile. So organizations very much do need everybody out there tapping into their networks, whoever they may be. So probably a sort of crossover. I did a sort of a quick diagram there, Work teams may use different networks, so there may be a crossover in networks, but essentially it's about the continuous learning in the organization. This is the only way we can learn continuously, by people feeding in what they're learning outside and for that organization to sort of benefit from it. So a professional network has to be of value for you, for sure, but it also needs to be, you need to use that in terms of your organization, share what you learn. Does anybody want to add anything to that? Exactly. Survival. So it's upon all of us to learn and share from one another. Okay, we're going to come towards the last piece now, because we know that this is something that we usually get asked, and Jane is going to take on the great task of dealing with it.
All right, well, first of all, I want to respond to the fellow who was talking about not finding value online. First of all, I didn't mean to mislead us into thinking the only external or extended support I was talking about was online. In my world, I need to be outside my organization. There really isn't anybody there for me to talk to. When I was a classroom trainer, when I was a platform person, even as I moved into e-learning, I belonged to a very vibrant community that got together quarterly. We weren't online at all. We had email toward the end of that. I wrote my dissertation about it. So I'm not discounting the fact that you may have in-person, face-to-face encounters, telephone encounters, WebEx encounters. I don't, frankly, find a lot of value from most of the LinkedIn groups focused on training and development. It looks to me like a lot of people said, I want my group different from your group, and let's all talk about the same things. And what I like best is when they talk about building a new silo to talk about tearing down other silos. So I agree with you. I think it's really, though, important that you look for the resources that bring you value and craft the community you need, whether it's face-to-face or online or otherwise. But let's talk, how many of you in the conversations today or otherwise, when we talk about social learning, when we talk about collaborative learning, when we talk about sharing, how many of you have an image in your head of a boss who is scowling and saying, we don't have time for everybody to be sharing? We need for people to work and not talk. To some people, this seems very touchy-feely. To some people, this seems like a time eater, especially when we talk about online interactions, especially with something like Twitter. So Etienne Wenger, who was actually the source text for my dissertation on communities, Etienne Wenger and his wife Beverly and a fellow named Martin Delatte did a wonderful new conceptual framework for helping us measure the value of these interactions from the initial contact point to whether the organization is seeing some value. Now, I'm going to show you a chart from a 45-page white paper. I strongly encourage you to go Google for the white paper. It's available. It's free. You can download it. It has lots more detail than I'm about to give you, and it has a great deal of information about how to get employees to report back on what they're doing. So, Jane, if you could bring it up. We got the conceptual framework moves across these 5 stages when we talk about the value of interactions. Now, they wrote this specifically for online, but I have found it to be true of face-to-face interactions as well. So first of all, we talk about the immediate value from somebody engaging in a community or in online interactions or hanging out on Twitter or joining LinkedIn groups. I already told you I've tweeted 50,000 times. I'm on Twitter all the time. I help run chats. Why do I do that? Why does Jane get on Twitter and do anything? To get input from other people. Do I meet people I want to know, like Jane Hart and David Kelly, right? Do I have fun? Those of you who follow me on Twitter, do I appear to be having a good time? You know what? You can't convince people they're having fun when they're not. The first thing is they have to like it. You know, you can't make people, you can't force people to be social. So I like Twitter. I'm having fun. Do I feel that I'm getting quality interaction from the people I engage with? Sure. All right? So there's a reason I'm willing to do this in the first place. It has nothing really to do with these platitudes about my organization and helping my team. I have a good time. I find that no matter what time of the day or night, I can get on Twitter and there's somebody interesting talking about something I didn't even know I wanted to talk about. All right? So that's the first thing. There's a reason I'm there and I'm getting some value. Now, the potential value of this, the fact that Jane's hanging out on Twitter and making all these connections, am I meeting people who could have value to me? Am I making meaningful connections? Am I meeting people who might have something I could use? Am I making good social connections? Am I accessing tools and documents? You know the answer to this. I showed you an example 3 slides ago. Remember, WebEx has a job aid for this? Yeah. So WebEx has a job aid. Now I'm using it. Now I've shared it with somebody else. So I'm getting access to tools I didn't have before. I'm getting access to artifacts. Am I acquiring new skills? By engaging on Twitter. Am I getting a new view of how learning happens? Yes. I would say, if nothing else, the world of social media and engaging online has taught me a lot about the way we learn that's not the way I was necessarily taught people learn. All right, the third category is the applied value. All right, Jane hangs out on Twitter. Jane has all these connections. Jane tweets all the time. Jane B. tweets all the time. Am I implementing the advice I get? I showed you an example. Yes. WebEx has a job aid. Yes. All right. Am I showing innovative practice? When I tell you the alternative is to spend all afternoon Googling around and calling IT and calling a university, am I showing an innovative way of approaching a task? Yes. Am I showing reuse of products? Yes. Am I using my social connections? Are you starting to see how we connect the dots here to not just hanging out being social, but starting to show actual value? Am I showing a new approach to learning? Yes. All right, here is where we hit the road. The realized value of Jane hanging out on Twitter in this particular example is the example I showed you of my engaging online. Am I showing any reflection on my personal job performance? Yes. Jane got a question, Jane got an answer, Jane fixed the problem. Am I showing any kind of reflection on my organization's performance or reputation? All right, when's the last time you called a government agency and got the right answer in 4 minutes? Yes, I am. All right, then I take a screenshot of what I showed you and I drop it in my weekly report. I did this, this is how I got it, I got an answer, we solved this problem. I called Vocational Rehabilitation Services back. I said, I've got this job aid for you, it's on the way over, problem solved. So I can take a tie from the time I spend investing in those connections and talking to people on Twitter, participating in chats, to showing an end result at some point that is, in fact, giving a real result to my organization. I don't know that I've changed our organization's strategy, but I have changed my boss's expectations. I have changed the way my boss wants to look at problems. My boss says, I like that Jane's on Twitter because she can get me any answer I want. I have shifted within the smaller work unit the way that we approach some of this stuff and the value of just having a good community to draw on instead of just Googling around all day or going without or saying, sorry, I can't help you. Here is the problem that we run into in the workplace when we try to have these conversations, especially with executive management. I can't give you an algorithm for this. We have become so accustomed to convenient metrics and cosmetic metrics and vanity metrics, as Chad Udell calls them. I can't tell you if you're on Twitter 4 hours a day and you tweet 17 times and you retweet 2 people and one of them's Jane Hart and one of them's an article that you will get the result I got. It is an investment in the relationships, an investment in the community. It's giving time back when maybe there's not immediate value for you right there. It's giving time back and answering questions that may not have anything to do with anything you care about. But it's an investment in the other people and in the community in the broadest sense. But I can't say, here's a one-off formula for calculating how that happens. You want to add to that? You're nodding heavily.
I'm nodding,
Say something.
absolutely, yes.
Say
no.
something.
You know, we always want to see an immediate return, don't we, from something. This takes place. There is return. Sometimes invisible, and this is the trouble. It's all of it's intangible stuff here. It's not about. It could be ongoing performance and improvements, and the business line improves, but it's about other things. And I think we've got to start thinking about those intangibles because it's going to improve, hopefully, internal relationships, performance in some ways, as I say, which might even be invisible.
Right.
So we need to think further.
Right. And I think our challenge as L&D professionals, as training practitioners, the challenge we have here is helping employees surface what's going on in that 4th column and maybe over into the 5th. We want them to turn in reports about their activities, had a meeting, had a phone call, went to this, did that. We need to help them surface these things. I got this answer from Jane. I got this answer from my community. I was able to solve this problem because of you, and start documenting that. And again, I refer you to the Winger, Trainer, and Delight article because they have a lot of ideas for how to help employees self-report better. It goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning, about why people share, about how we can help employees share, about how we can give them tools and processes and ideas and a comfort zone so that they are willing to recognize when this kind of thing happens and tell it back to the organization so that we can start capturing that a little bit better and giving credit where it's due and recognizing that a great deal of organizational learning is going on around us without us a great deal of the time. So helping employees in that goal of learning at work and sharing what they're learning at work and helping others learn at work will ultimately serve all of us better in the field, I think. And I believe that's the Jane Show. Yay, Jane Show! And we're through. You need to go to lunch, but we can stick around if people have questions. Is that right? Or want to talk? What do you want to do? We're through.
A few minutes left if anyone has any outstanding questions, but...
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me over.
Thank you for coming.
Can I just ask one simple...
Are you going to take a question?
I don't know if this is a simple or very complicated one. Are there any very basic rules, for example, like don't mix work with social? Because I know that's what's put a lot of people off. They use it for, say, work purposes, and then somebody says, oh, I'm sitting in a pub having a great time, and people go, oh, this is trivializing it, and it turns them off. Are there simple rules that can help people make better use of it and not destroy it?
Be honest about who you are. Recognize that what you say on the internet is permanent. Don't divulge company information. We've already got communication policies. And be truthful about where you work. I don't get on Twitter and talk about drinking and religion and politics. I may do that other places, but I can't fix stupid if employees are going to do that. But I also am not, if you tell me I can only tweet about work, I'm done with that. I think employees have to learn to be sensible about it. I will say, I challenge you to come up with a single example, and I can think of one, but I challenge you to come up with one example of a time an employee has caused a social media disaster for a company. There's this, it's usually the CEO or the social media people who create the problems. It's not some rogue employee doing something stupid, and they forget that a lot of times. Jane?
If you're worried, have two different accounts, I know I had a teacher who used to be was a salsa dancer. She didn't want her students all hearing about her salsa dancing, so she had two accounts. One where she talked about salsa dancing, the other one where she did stuff with their students. So you can separate your lives if you want to. Nowadays, lots of people are not bothered about separating their life. You know, it's becoming very, very blurred what they do at work and play and so forth. But if you're concerned about it, separate it out.
Any other questions? And if you're leaving, just quietly leave, and we'll just capture this because there's enough of you here.
Following up what Jane Bozarth said, do you have any documentation about that assertion that an employee has never caused embarrassment? That would be so valuable, because that's what everyone's so scared of.
I can't prove no. I can prove who did cause social media disasters. I can think of one, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. But I can think of a lot of times, Chick-fil-A, Nestle, Ragu spaghetti sauce, KitchenAid. Who?
I was going to say they cause it themselves.
They cause it themselves. I have lots of examples of CEOs and the social media people. I have very few examples of an employee doing it. But I can't say no one ever did. I'm sure someone did. But I would ask you the same question. I would just throw out the question. I did tell me of a time. And people come back with Snowden. Snowden didn't use social media.
No.
That's the only example they can give me. And I'm like, well, okay, Watergate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Cool.
As they
Thank you.
said, they'll
Bye.
be around here afterwards. Thank you.